Hi there. This video was initially a live stream on my Landscaping Business Growth Hub Facebook page. If you're a landscaper looking to build your business and to grow, then why don't you come join our page? There's tips and resources that are put on there every week, including videos, helpful webinars on a variety of topics from marketing to pricing to efficiencies and just in general, great advice to grow your business based on my over 20 years experience in the industry, as well as the advice of other people that are in the group. So I hope that you enjoy this video that is going to start now. And I'd like to welcome the people who are here to the webinar, How to Price Your Lawn for Profitability. My name is Dan Jones. Many of you, I'm sure, know me because we have been chatting. There will be other people that will be watching this on YouTube later that aren't able to attend just because of work. If you have any questions, I ask you to go ahead and please put them in the comments section, and I will try and keep an eye on that as well. So a little bit about me. I started my own lawn and landscaping business. I used to call it lawnscaping and hardscaping back in 2002. I grew it over a 20-year period and sold it in 2022 and then moved back north to get away from the Florida heat and back to the hills of my youth. So I'm currently living in Maryland. I'm originally from New Jersey, but Maryland's close enough. I like it. I've got access to the ocean, got access to the mountains and the city, so it's nice here. But I do have 20 years experience in landscaping and hardscaping. When I first started out, I made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of those mistakes, they cost me profitability and they cost me frustration. And I'm really lucky that there were business people who, for lack of a better phrase, took pity on me and kind of gave me pointers and walked me through different aspects of having a business so that I was able to get better at it. I did learn. I'm constantly learning, even now. When people are coming to me for advice, every now and then something will gum me up, and I'm like, huh, never thought about that. I believe personally that life is a learning experience, and every day we should be learning. So there's still things to learn in this business. For me, even with the 20 years. So yes, I will share the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see it if you uh, notice the marketing webinar that I'd done with Phil Risher a couple of weeks ago. That is my YouTube channel, and but I will share it to the group for everybody. Also, if you want to save it. So what we're going to do is we are going to cover how to price out just a lawn job, not landscaping, not anything else, just a lawn job, not even trimming the bushes. I'm not going to get into that yet, okay? But the first thing that you have to be able to know, the first thing you have to know before you can even get into pricing a job is you have to know what your costs are. Now, I think that some of you, if not all of you that are following me right now, may very well have the cost calculator that I shared about a month and a half ago. If you're watching this on YouTube and you would like a sample of this, please drop a comment in the comment section on YouTube. Here in the group, if you don't have it, drop a comment here and I will make sure to get it to you. Now, this cost calculator that I have is very, very basic. And when I say basic, you're going to see what I mean. This was designed to help startups or people that are inexperienced just get a basic handle on the cost for their business. As you grow, this is not going to cut it for you. There's extra calculations that need to go in there. So what I've done is I've set up what the average monthly overhead was for my business back in 2018. Okay. And you'll scroll down here and you'll see that my monthly overhead was $43,150. That included the rent, utilities, all the way down to my salary, my operations manager, my office staff, the person that was handling my maintenance for me. Okay. So let me just minimize this a little bit. Okay. I guess that didn't work. Okay. Like I said, bear with me. So $43,150 is my monthly overhead. The next thing that you need to understand about your business is how many hours are you actually putting into production each day? Okay. And you really need to start tracking your time if you're not. If you're whether it's just you and two people working with you, or if you've already brought on a team and like maybe you go mow some yards and that other team goes and mows someplace else, you need to understand how long everybody's actually mowing versus other things. What are other things? Loading up in the morning, maybe getting fuel, drive time, and then drive time between jobs. Okay. So you may add all that stuff together and realize that you start at 7 o'clock in the morning, you finish at 5 o'clock, but all you're actually getting instead of 10 hours is maybe 8.5 hours of production. Okay. Whatever that is, you want to put that in here. What's your average daily production rate? Okay. If you don't know it, start with a guess. Start with a guess and then refine it as you're tracking your time. As you track your time, then you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm at only 7 hours of production time in a 10-hour day. I need to get that up. That can become a KPI for you, okay? A key performance indicator. Let everybody know, hey, we're at 7. We need to bump it to 8. And then everybody's striving to find ways to get there. But what, we've got here, I'm saying it's 6.8, right? This is on a 10-hour day, this company is not very efficient. Okay. I'm not saying that's what my company was, but I put it there, to show a company that's not very efficient, 6.8 hours, right? Okay. That then tells us that the hourly cost for the overhead is $292.87. Now, this is where I said this cost calculator is not going to help you if you start to grow your business. And here's why. If my overhead cost is $292.87, and I haven't even calculated paying my people yet or my profit margins, and I go out and I bid a job and I say it's going to take an hour, there is nobody in the world that's going to pay me $292.87 plus $87.51 for labor plus the 30% on top of that. This figure is my total overhead cost, but my company had 14 people working operationally. Okay, I had a couple of crews for lawn maintenance, a couple of crews that did cleanup and landscaping jobs, and a couple of techs that did irrigation for me. So if I were to take that 292.87 and divide it by the 14 people that I had, I would come out with the figure $29. I'm sorry, $20.92 that you see right here. Okay. And then my cost for employees, a 3-man crew, was a total of $87.51. So if I divide it by 3, I get the average. The average employee costs $29.17. So my overhead with an employee cost is $50.09. They've got to make that plus each person has to make that plus their profit. Okay. So if we take that 50.09 and say I want a 30% profit margin, I divide it by 0.7. Okay. And I come up with 71.55 is what my hourly rate needs to be to make my profit. Okay. So that's covering that section right now. I want to see if anybody has any questions about what I've just covered first. So if anybody has any questions, if you want to drop them in here, I'm going to look at them and then I can answer them. But that's just covering your basic costs. Okay. So I do want to ask, where do I get the 0.7 figure when calculating? Okay, that's a good question. So 30% is 0.3 of the number 1, right? The number 1 represents 100%. So if I subtract the 0.3 from the 1, I end up with 0.7. So if you want a 40% profit margin, you would now divide by 0.6. Okay, so I hope that clears up. Okay, so $71 an hour is now what the labor burden with profit is for each employee. Okay. But that $71 an hour lets us know what our hourly cost is when we're bidding a job also. So we're going to go ahead and when we get to bidding out the job, we're going to remember that $71 and put it in there so that we can calculate it. Okay. So um, yeah, I do want to ask, how's everybody, if you can just tell me, how have you been bidding your jobs? Has it just been through guesswork or have you been measuring? Or do you just ask other people, and just go from there? So if you don't mind sharing some of that information with me, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to talk about measuring accurately. So what I want to do is come down to here and take a look at, oh gosh, this is the one thing I despise about the way my screen gets shared. Okay. This is the National Association of Landscape Professionals. They put out sample production rates. I don't adhere to them 100%, but some stuff they've got in there is pretty good. What I don't like about their turf mowing is they're very simplistic: easy, moderate, difficult, and they see what they describe on there. Okay. But then their production rates don't take into account some of the stuff that I take into account. They say a 21-inch mower. Okay. But how fast is that mower moving? Okay. They say 42 to 48. Well, that's two entirely different size mowers. Okay. There are fluctuations there. Okay. So having accurate measurement of a job are going to let you know, once you have, your mower information also, how many square feet you can cut per minute. And you want to know that because you want to know how many minutes you're going to be on a job. Measuring the job lets you know how many linear feet of property needs to be edged. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this property. This was one of the earliest properties I had. Please disregard what the lawn looks like now. I have not maintained it for several years, so it is not my fault that it's got fungus and weeds in it. It never did when I was taking care of it. I do want to tell you a little story. If we come down this street just a little bit and you look to this corner property, this was one of my first customers. She hired me, liked me so much. 2 weeks later, the lady to the side of her hired me. While I was taking care of both those properties, a couple of weeks later, the guy at this house came out and hired me. The people in this house that originally owned it were so impressed that they hired me. And then the people across the street, and you might recognize this house because I use it in some of my social media, but they hired me to maintain them. Okay. This house eventually sold to another couple, and they kept me for another 15 years. And I think they may still be using the current company. However, let's look at this yard. Okay. What do we need to look at if we're pulling up at this yard? We need to know how much lawn we have to mow. Okay. So the next question I want to ask you guys, I keep asking first questions. I've got a lot of first questions. Um, okay. Who here knows how to measure by square feet? A lot of people have said yes, but a couple of people probably haven't. So let me know in the comments section if you don't know how to measure square feet. I am going to cover it here right now, but I can give you a primer on it afterwards. So square footage is, you want to take the length. If you see where my arrow's moving, you measure this, and then you go up the walkway. We'll call that our width, and you multiply them by each other. Now, it's hard to see here, but up around this top, there's still some more lawn. Okay, so when I stopped here, I've made a rectangle, but I still need to account for that lawn. Now, I don't have to get it perfect, but I still need to get the general height or width and length of that area and add it in. As well, I want to add in this. Okay. We can take out the trees. I don't, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you still have to mow around them. So we're calculating how long it takes you to cut. And if you have to travel around a tree, you're still traveling that. That's still affecting your time. So I don't take out trees when I'm doing the square footage. So one of the ways that you can do it is to go ahead and measure your square footage this way with a measuring wheel. Don't try and walk it. You're going to get very tired, and your feet are not the same size as everybody else's feet. It's just going to be very general. But that's square footage. Linear footage would be how much edging do I need to do? Let's say you walk here and it's 43 feet, and then you walk up here and it's another 28, and then you turn around and now you come down here, that's another 28, and then you continue to walk down this area edging, and you work your way all the way around to the driveway over there. You add all that stuff up and then you go up the driveway. That's your linear feet for edging. Okay. So these are the ways that you measure jobs. Is everybody understanding that, or is there any question? Okay. You've used Google to measure. That's great. Google Maps can be very good. There are some free services out there also, and I will try and drop it. This is called Measure My Lawn. Okay, measuremylawn.com. And as a matter of fact, I will include this in the comment section on the official video. If you go here, the first thing it's going to do is give you tips how to do this stuff. Okay, but we're not going to. What we're going to do is look at the measurements that I already started taking for that very same yard that I used to do. I measured out the entire property and got the square footage. And it came to, if you look down here, 21,783.67. Guys, I wasn't perfectly straight, and I apologize. I'm usually more careful when I'm doing it like for a real job. We'll just say I hadn't had enough coffee this morning and I had the jitters. But then there's a way to go in on this little area here. You can click the subtract button, because this measurement that we're looking at, I took out the house and the covered garage, the covered portico. I connected all that stuff together. Then I took out this area, which was a garden with a concrete sitting area. And then I took out the basketball hoop in the back. And I also took out the sidewalk. Now that covered patio also has the covered driveway has a driveway in there. Okay, we're going to want to remember that in a little bit. But what I ended up getting was my total amount of square footage for the job we see down here, 14,477.93. Okay, that's with everything subtracted. That's what it gives me. Now, this is a calculator that I have created and I'm still working on. Okay, there's some refinements I want to make on it. I put in 14,278 because I know, let's go back to this picture. This area right here is just a small section of lawn that can't be accessed with anything other than a push mower. So all of this can be done with one of my bigger mowers. Okay. I do want to touch on this. This is a difficult yard unless you have walked it and know it to do from Google Maps, just because of the sheer number of trees that are planted there. So if you don't know where everything is, you might actually be better to measure it. Okay, if you because you want to try and be as accurate as possible. Okay, so we'll go back here though. I put in 14,278. I took out the 200 square feet for that little area of grass in the back. So the 14,278 can be done with a 48-inch mower. Here, I allow you to switch between some of the more standard size mowers. Okay. The next thing I do is allow you to switch between the speed. Typically, when we were mowing a property that had very minimal barriers or anything like that to it, 5 miles per hour was a pretty steady speed. That included turns and stuff like that. But you can bring it up. I mean, if you're doing like a big field, you can probably get up to 8 miles an hour. I really don't think that I've ever seen a mower mowing effectively at any speeds really over 8 miles per hour. So, but here for this property, we put it in for 5, which tells us the time to mow that lawn would be 9 minutes and 1 second, 9.01 minutes. So a little under a second. The next thing that we would do was we took our measurements. It's going back here. Remember, I said that we would measure linear feet also. If you look at these yellow lines that are around the edge, the arrows that are pointing, that's where I measured all the edging that needs to be done on this property. So it was everywhere there. There was never anything back here, never anything in the gardens, never anything along the front bed that needed, and then around the basketball court in the back, which gave us a total of 469.47. Okay. So if we go back to here, I got it 469. We can go ahead and just bump it up to 470. Okay. Again, production hours, your production rates, I should say. How much can you edge per minute? How many feet can you edge per minute? In general, 100 feet is pretty good. Okay. Sometimes you can go faster, but sometimes you'll get slowed down. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So I'm being asked by Will Egan. You go off how long it will take you to do the job. Does this help me figure out how long it will take you? Yes. And we're going to get into a little bit more of the why of that. Okay. But let's put it down to if you really want to grow, you need to have a set time that is realistic that you can hold your employees to. Again, another KPI. Is the timing on this job for an open cut or bagging? It's for an open cut. Okay. In Florida, it's very rare that you would bag. So bagging does add time, but there is an area in this calculator. If you look down here, you've got the estimated load, unload time. If you want to add in the extra number of minutes that you estimate that it would take you to bag, to bag it, you could go ahead and do that. But I've added in the linear feet, and they average it at about 100 linear feet per minute is what people do. Okay. Linear feet of weed eating. That goes a little slower. Okay. And the reason it goes slower is let's come back and take a look at this job again. We're going to look at the house. You could very well be doing some weed eating with this property, especially right along the edges, because here, always on this property here, and all around this area, you couldn't get the mower up against it. You would, and if you were not careful, you'd end up in the street and messing up your lawnmower. So almost everywhere that needed to be edged needed to be weed eated also. But then you got to weed eat around the trees. You got to weed eat the edges of the beds. You've got to weed eat other things in the backyard. So the estimate that I had back then as for the weed eating was 800 generally linear feet. And one of the reasons that the number of feet you're able to do per minute goes down is because weed eating should be a precision tool, right? I mean, you'll see people zip, 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 but really you want to try and make sure that you're keeping that level and not tearing at the grass when you're doing it. Okay. But the other thing is you've got to walk from tree to tree and you're not weed eating anything. You've got to walk from that next tree to a bed and you're not weed eating anything. So 25 is a fair, amount to figure, especially because you're having to take time going around air conditioner units and coils that are out there, maybe garden hoses. You've got to move things. So 20, you doing about 25 linear feet a minute seems about accurate. Okay. So as you can see though, the time for your weed eating is the highest. Okay. We've got 4.7 minutes to edge, 9 minutes to mow, And then we come down to blowing. So how do you figure out your blowing? Let's go back and take a look again. Oh, geez. We'll come back here. Everywhere that you've edged, you need to blow. Okay, so all the linear feet that you've got on the edges of the property, you would take that, our total, let's come back to the distance again, of 469.47, and you would multiply that by 3. Why? Because you're not just blowing the edge. You're typically blowing a couple of feet out from the street and blowing it up into the yard or blowing it into a pile if it's really heavy and then scooping it up. Okay. Plus, your walkway is typically between 3 to 4 feet. Now, once you've got the linear feet of area that needs to be, you've also got to get the square footage of your driveway and the square footage of this patio back here, the garden area, and the square footage of the basketball court. And you add all that stuff together. And when you put it in, you've got your square feet to blow, 3,450. The average that you can blow is about 417 square feet a minute, meaning it'll take you about 8.27 minutes. Once all this stuff is added together, you want to add in your time estimated to load and unload. That includes time like, what? Okay, when you're bidding, look at it. Where do I think I would finish with the mower? How long is it going to take that mower to get back to the trailer and load it up? Now I got to grab the next tool, right? Well, hopefully, if you've got somebody else with you, they've already done the edging and now they're on the weed eating. Okay, so now you're going to start blowing, but now you got that blower from where you're parked over to where you got to start blowing. That's a little bit of time. And then once you finish blowing, getting loaded back, walking back to the trailer, loading everything up. So, I estimate on a bigger yard like this, about 7 minutes of load and unload and walking time. And when all that stuff's added together, I come up with, is this an easy yard? Okay. Easy yard, it doesn't have, a lot of obstacles, doesn't have slopes, doesn't have, any of the major hindrances that'll slow it down. I've got 102. But there's one other thing that we've got to do. And like I said, I'm working on adding some other stuff to this. For example, having more than just one mower, because we need to add the 200 square feet with the push mower, which typically goes 2 miles an hour. Okay. And then I'm just going to take out that. And I'm going to take out that. And I'm going to take out that. And so my 1.01 added to 0.13, we're going to say that comes to 1.14. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and write this in here right now. Okay. That's for an easy yard. There's a calculation that goes in here that says moderate, and it'll increase, okay, by about 12%. And moderate could be, maybe a little bit of a slope, or maybe a few more obstacles, or maybe it's a really difficult gate to get in and out of, or there's a couple of gates on the property. But, moderate is just, it's not really difficult. You're not sweating it. You don't hate doing it. Difficult is going to be like this. Okay. This is a commercial property in Maryland that I had helped one of the companies I was working with to bid. Okay. It's got slopes here. But let's look at that slope. Okay. That is not something you can safely get a riding mower on. And I can tell you that because the slope's gotten worse. If you were to physically go out there and look at it, now I was by there the other day, it has gotten far, far worse, and it's rutted. So that needs to be push mowed, or some people will just generally weed eat it. But either way, it's going to take more time. And of course, there's a lot more going up here. Okay. And if we come over here, and go all the way over there, and you look all the way around their pool, it's the same thing. And there's a couple of obstacles like this in this property. So how would I rate this property if I were doing it in a calculator? I would rate it as difficult. Okay. Um, but anyway, I'm going to pause for a second, see if anybody's got any questions or anything that I've mixed. I'm not seeing any questions, but if you want to drop something down in there, if you do, okay. Um, so that's a little bit on the production rates. Okay. Um, but now we're going to come back in. We're going to figure out. We had said that our labor burden was $50.09. So the profit margin is 30%, and that gives us price per man hour of 71.56. Okay. That's how long, not the commercial property I just showed you, but the first property that we had looked at, it would take 1.14 hours for one person to do that all by themselves with loading and unloading time. Okay. And so the sales price for that job would be 1.14 times the 71.56 to say we're going to charge $81.58 for that job. I'd round it up to 82, right? Otherwise, people are going to be like, why 81.58? I wouldn't round it up to 85. And here's why. If you give a different, like, 86, 82, 83, especially, when you're taking a few minutes to actually put together a bid, people will recognize that you're professionally considering their property. Okay. And you've come up with a legitimate figure instead of just throwing out, oh, this guy thinks he can get 85, bucks every week for me. Okay. But so this is your job price. I do suggest that you have a minimum. Okay. Let's go ahead and say that we bid out, we looked at a job that would take you 20 minutes, which would be 0.33. 20 minutes all told, right? Because you're just going gangbusters and stuff like that. That would mean that you would charge $23.61. No, no, there's no way. Okay. I would have a minimum of like 30 or 35. So anytime that a job calculation comes up to less than whatever your minimum is, they just automatically get the minimum. Okay. Does that make sense? How that pricing worked and everything? Are there any questions there? Has everybody fallen on
I got a question.
Okay.
So you were saying that or 83 dollars would be per cut, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
That's the next part that we're going to get into. And this is just the mowing, right? I have been working on an area to do like with bush trimming and also bed spraying if it's being included. But once you know what it is on your per cut rate, then you go ahead and you start putting together your proposal. Now, in Florida, you mow year round. Okay. I'm going to go with I'll tell you the problem I had and my solution to how I fixed it. Um, there were a lot of people that were like, well, I don't want to pay for lawn mowing every week. But we have this grass down in Florida called bahia, which during the summer grows like crazy. Okay, the rain starts falling, you can mow that yard, you can come back a week later and it's already up to your shins. Sometimes even higher than that if it's really been raining. I had this one lady that would dump her window ACs, all the condensation down into her yard. I'd come every week to mow her yard and it would be up to my thigh. Okay, Bahia was a bear. And I would have people that would say, well, I only want it mowed every 2 weeks. Well, if I went out there and mowed it every 2 weeks, I wouldn't just mow it once. I wouldn't mow it twice. Sometimes I'd have to mow it 3 times to get the grass looking right. And I was such a perfectionist that I wouldn't leave a yard with grass just popping up here and there. So I was just losing my shirt mowing yards. Okay. Okay. So you got zoysia and St. Augustine. That's great, right? I love both of those grasses. They're far easier to cut. But I'm like, I'm losing my shirt. I need to be able to mow this stuff every week and be able to keep up my production. So what I did was I said, okay, look, I know you don't want to pay for every week. You think you want to pay twice a month. I said this to the Bahia customers and other people, but I said, but I'm getting rid of biweekly cuts. From April 1st through September 30th, I'm cutting your yard every week. In October and November, in February and March, I'll cut your yard twice a month. And in December, I'll cut it once a month. January, I'll cut it once a month. Adding all that together comes to 36 mows a year. There's 12 months in a year. So I said, you pay me for 3 cuts a month, whether I'm there one time or 5 times. And, you know, we just run it for a year. And surprisingly, a lot of people said, okay, that's fine. I explained to them my problem, but I also took into account their desire and I met in the middle ground with them and was able to create this program that okay, when I said 5 weeks, we all know, or we should, that some months can have 5 Mondays or 5 Fridays in it just because the way it is. And so if a person's yard is scheduled for Monday and there's 5 Mondays, I'm actually having to pay my people to go out and mow that lawn 5 times, but I'm only being paid for 3. But because I had my pricing set right, even in those couple of times that I would have to mow it 5 times, I was at least breaking even. And then in December, January, October, all those months where I was on minimal cuts and I was still getting paid for 3, that's where I was making some bank. And that's how I was able to keep some of my people year round also because I had the money to be able to put them, to be able to cover them through the dips and rises of the holiday season. Okay. And that made them more loyal to me and more committed to the company. So in the long run, it kind of worked out. But I had to know what my rate was. I had to know, am I going to lose money, if I'm doing this, 5 cuts, am I going to start having a cash flow problem? So knowing your cost and then calculating, how long that job is going to take was an important thing. Now you take that and you put it together into a package for whatever your area is. Okay. Now a residential package is going to be different than a commercial package. Your apartment complexes like the one I just showed you, they usually have a set number of mows that they expect. And they'll when they renew a contract with somebody or sign a new contract with somebody, they want to keep their mows at the same that they had paid with the previous company. And like up here in Maryland, it could be sometimes like 24 to 30, depending on the apartment complex and how high end it is. Okay. But you put that in there, okay, now we know like mowing this house is going to be, whatever the figure is, we just figured out, what was it? 70, I, I can't remember now, but because we'll say 80, right? Just for the sake of argument, we'll say it's $81. Okay. Um, and I'm going to do 20 mows. Okay, you put that package together with the people, you're going to get 80 visits that include mowing, edging, weed eating, blowing. You're going to get bush trimming, and you estimate out how long it's going to take you to do the bushes. I'm going to trim your bushes 4 times a year. Okay, you put all that stuff into a proposal and you send it to them. And the reason you want to line item that stuff is because some people may go, well, all I want is mowing. They thought they wanted bush trimming, but then when they looked at it, well, let me ask you, what's better? Is it better to have, pick up another lawn mowing client near another one that you have, even if they don't want the bush trimming? So at least you've got less drive time and higher profitability on the days they're mowing. So now you put this proposal together with all the services that you're going to do, and you're going to send it to them. And you really want to have it look professional, which either means sit down and work out a template that you can drop figures into or have some type of app. I suggest Jobber. I was with Jobber since they first started. I've watched them grow. They can be a little bit expensive for if you're just starting out. They do have different levels of plans, and you can pay monthly or you can pay annually. But the reason that I like them is because the estimates are professional. If you once you set it up, you have all your services, you just drop it in there and you can go ahead and send it. The customer can sign it and approve it right then and there. You're eliminating friction. They can pay deposits on jobs. They can pay their lawn maintenance bill in there. Now, I know there's other sites out there, but that's the one I like. Okay. If you are interested in it, I can go ahead and let me see where I'd had that. I can just drop the link for it. Uh, I'll drop it in the thing. I can get you a little bit of a discount if you want. It is free just to play around with it. Uh, so there's no harm in going ahead and doing that. But whatever you decide on, you want to have a professional bid going out to the people. Okay. The days of doing it by the book, with a book and then, handing them a bid sheet, they're kind of gone, right? Having it all digital also makes it easy for you to just pull it up at any point. And you can also add your contract right into it. Okay. So because you should please, I just want to say this because I see it all the time and it really just makes me so worried. Don't copy somebody else's contract. The laws are different from state to state. They can be different even from city to city sometimes with certain codes on it. Pay the money to have a lawyer write your contract, okay, to protect you. And then you can include it in your quote. They sign that and boom, the contract now becomes, in force. Okay. And you have all your payment agreements and everything in there. You just look professional. And that's what you want to do. If you're watching this video, you're not some Joe Schmo with a plunger in the back of the truck that's doing both mowing and, plumbing repair and handyman stuff. You are actually a professional landscaper. This is what you want to be. So look at, please. Okay. In whatever type program you use, go digital is my suggestion because there's so much more flexibility in what you can give to your customers. One of the things I loved about Jobber, because I would send out my marketing messages and then people could just start paying the deposits for, jobs. Like if I gave them quotes or I said, hey, get your irrigation inspection, boom, they order it and they pay for it right there. I'd wake up in the morning, I could have another $500-600 in my account that I didn't have when I went to bed that night. And the next morning, the same thing, all from a simple marketing message that I would sync with Jobber. Okay. So it gives you a way to generate money. So we've talked about factoring in your load and unload times. But I want to go back now to the most important thing because Will ask this, and let me get back to that question again. Does it help me figure out how long it will take you? Okay. So we are going to go to a very old master list that I created for my business. This is a copy of one from like 2012. Okay. I've I over here on the left, you guys can't see the names of the customers because, even though they're not my customers anymore, I just didn't want to have that on there. But just imagine there's names over here. They're all John Doe, right? John Doe lived at this address. In the master list, I would put everything, what height the yard needed to be cut at, what level of service it was, any area for notes. Okay. That never got filled out on this thing. And then I would mark, doesn't need to be done this week. You'll notice the color coding because back in the old days, I used to have everything color coded. If it was white, it got visited every week. And then if it was biweekly, I would have a yellow week and I would have an orange week. And if it was a once a month property, and this is back before I changed to that, different level of service that I had, I would code it blue. Okay, then there'd be the billing address and all sorts of payment information. And then I could look in here and know the next time I needed to inspect a property. All that stuff would carry over into this daily log. Any of the properties that had a one written on it that typed into it would have shown up here And then I could print out that day's work and give it to the crew. And so they'd be told everything that, they see a name and an address for, they got to go to. I would have them at the top of this sheet, they would write in what time they left the yard in the morning. Now, my standard was you guys come in at 7, don't be late. You will leave at 7:10. If we were getting sheets back that showed that they were leaving at 7:15 or 7:16, because sometimes I wouldn't be there. I'd be out doing bids or I had other meetings and stuff. And maybe my operations manager would be tied up with something and the crew just be dilly-dallying in the yard, right? But they had to write down what time they left. If it said 7:16, my operations manager was asking them the next day why. Okay. The equipment was all loaded. I had somebody come in early that would fill everything up with gas, reload the trucks with, extra string and anything that they were short. So all they had to do was get in the truck and the trailer and take off, right? That shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. They get a little bit of a meeting and then just leave. So from 7:10 to their first job, how long is it going to take them? This property, that first one, should have taken them 12 minutes. They made it in 11. See, they would arrive at the job at 7:21. They finished the job at 7:34. Now, this is all before GPS tracking, right? But still, writing down your numbers to know how long in the job, how long you actually worked it is good. How much time were they allotted? 16 minutes. So they got this job done in 13. Okay. They're ahead of the game. But the next one, which was just 2 minutes away, it took them 3 minutes to get there. Okay, that's fine, not a big deal. Till 7:58. So that is 21 minutes. This job was set for 18. The reason you want to measure is to know your production rates is so that when your crews are, if they're taking longer to do a job than what it says, and it's consistently over, you've got to go out and look at that crew. How are they doing that work? If they're doing everything by the numbers and you're not seeing inefficiencies, then there's a problem with how you bid that job and you need to raise the price. But if you don't know how long that job should take, you don't know whether or not your price is right. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Will? And does anybody else have a question about that? Give me a thumbs up if everybody's good so far. Okay, good. There's actually a button for that, but okay, great. Thank you, guys. Okay, I do want to see if there's any other questions that anybody has right now. Okay.
I got I got a question kind of regarding like the jobber. Have you ever like you heard a yard book?
I've
Those
heard of you. Yes,
those are like the two I always see in the groups, and I'm
right.
wondering like if you have an opinion on which one you think is like would be better.
Yeah, a yard book has some free options to it. So, I mean, if you're really concerned about cost, I understand that yard book could be very beneficial for you. But Jobber, I've watched, look, I mean, I was like one of their earliest customers. When they started raising prices, they didn't raise mine. I was grandfathered in. Can you imagine getting all the features that were on Jobber and only paying $9.95 a month?
Oh dang, yeah, I'm not really sure how much jobber charges. I haven't looked at that yet. I've only
Yeah.
looked at the phone.
But in other words, so yeah, that kind of made me happy with them that they were so cool as to grandfather me that way. I did outgrow them. I did, and I went to LMN and I did also kind of looked at Aspire and I've had experience with Aspire. None of you guys are at the point that you need to worry about that right now. But I think that Jobber is something that as soon as you can afford to get it, even if you just get the basic and then grow as your company grows, grow with it, I think that they offer far more. And they the only like when I talk to the people at Jobber, because I'll have conversations with them, the only problem I ever had with it was the routing software, but it's improved. I would have to route the old school way. I would put, I think you can put up to 15 properties into Google Maps. So I'd take my list and I'd put 15 in and move them around. And then I'd say, okay, that's that list and set it aside. Then I'd put the next 15 in and kind of move it around. Because Jobber did not help me with that, but it's gotten better. It's far easier to use for your routing now than it was for me. Um, so, um, yeah, that's that. Um, so I just want to emphasize business can't be guesswork. Okay. There is going to be guesswork, right? For example, you're going to hire somebody, you've asked all the right questions, they seem like they're going to be a great person, but you're kind of guessing. You really don't know until they show up. Okay. There are things that we have to guess or guesstimate or make our best, guess on. But the things that we can get hard and fast figures on, we should. Because as you grow, you can take these figures and you can fine tune your business. Okay. I don't know how many people might have seen my post the other day about the two pillars of growth, but there's the external and then there's the internal. Now, at all times, you need to be doing both, but you can only have a focus on one. So right now, if you're looking to grow your business, you're on the external. You're looking to acquire customers. You're looking to bring people in. You want to maximize your day, as much as possible and make sure that you've got as many people in there. But at the same time, you can still be looking at the internal. What can I fix to make things more efficient? How do I get out the door faster? How do I not have to spend 2 hours doing invoicing at night? Is what can I automate? What can I set up? So on and so forth. So you want to be focusing a little bit on internal so that you can really focus on the external. And then once you get to whatever sales figure you want, let's say $250,000 a year, now you pause growing that way and you turn inside the company and now you really focus on everything. Like, how long is this job taking us? Is there a faster way for us to do it? See, I eventually got to the point where when people started with me, they would be assigned somebody that they'd be working with, but they would have a book that they were expected to read when they were in the back of the truck. And it's how you tackle a yard. The person that's responsible for edging, right? And like we can go back to this picture because I do want to just kind of touch on this a little bit with um, the internal process that you can always be working on. Okay. My people would read the book and they would understand that when you pull up to that property, the person with the edger walks to this edge of the property. As you're looking at the house, the far right. And they start edging from there and they go this way and then they turn around and they go that way. Okay. They walk a pattern. And I chose a pattern that had the least amount of them back and forth. And it was the same thing. The guy that's doing the weeding, right? He's going to start because he's not going to be weed eating the same time that person's edging. He's going to be tackling a little bit after, but he's going to come up and he's going to weed eat. And then now his back is to that tree. Turn around, weed eat around the tree. Come back out, weed eat along that edge. Go along that bed there. Now go into the backyard. And okay, so they had to have a pattern that they were working. I'd written it out where these guys, they needed to know this stuff. And at the end of week one, they were getting tested on it. And at the end of week two, their test results better be better than week one because I wanted these guys to have a process and I would focus on that and I would actually increase the productivity on our jobs. Okay. You increase the productivity, you increase the profitability of your company. And then you also increase the profitability of your company by raising your prices. Once you get to your 250,000 as our imaginary number right now, you go through and you start to raise your prices. You're going to have a little bit of churn. Some people are going to drop off from you. Okay? But if you have the figures of how long jobs should take you and you say we're going to do a 20% increase, now all you got to do is just put 20% in, boom, and everything will increase right to where it needs to be. Okay? So those numbers are what help you and let you know and become KPIs or the basis for a KPI. Who here is not familiar with what a KPI is? If you're not, just go ahead and okay, Will. Okay. So a KPI is a key performance indicator. These could be things like, what do I need to know, right? As the owner of a business. One of the things I wanted to know is what's my close rate? In other words, if I go out and do 10 bids and I close six, okay, my close rate is 60%. Now I would get far more detailed than that. I'd want to know like, how much I'd spent and, on the ads, what it cost me, the cost of client acquisition. Okay. I think they call it a client acquisition cost, CAC. Okay. So knowing that figure, that's a key performance indicator for me. So then I know, since sales was always my responsibility in the company, it was the one thing I was never really able to give up to somebody, then I needed to set myself a standard of, improving that or at least hitting the base number, okay, that I wanted. And so that's what a KPI is. Your lawn maintenance teams, or if you're working with a crew of people, you want to start out the day. Say it's you and two other guys in the truck, and you want to say, guys, we're going to hit, you know, not overtime today, right? We're not going to work any more than 8 hours, and we're going to make $800. That's a KPI. It's a very simple one, right? We're not going over 8 hours. We're going to make $800. And then if you don't hit it, now you're able to talk to them. Hey guys, what happened? Right? And get input from your guys. Right? Sometimes they'll see something like, well, hey, if we did this around the yard, it might save a little bit of time, or I keep bumping into you, or something like that. Or sometimes, you don't hit your figure because you were on the road and there was a bus accident and you were stuck in traffic for 45 minutes or something. And sometimes things like that happen. But by having a KPI, at least you're able to identify, you know, uh, this was my goal. Where am I? Okay. And this was my goal every day of the week, and I hit it 4 out of 5 times. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other general questions that anybody has? You can unmute your microphone or you can type them in here and I'll read them out. No? Okay, guys. Well, I thank you for your time. I will be getting this onto YouTube. I hope it was helpful. Um, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe our page and click the notification bell so the next time that a video is posted, you can see it. And in the comment section, hopefully you've left some comments, and that is calculator if you want the initial calculator I was showing, and measure if you would be interested in being updated as I finish out the measuring tool for you. And then the other thing is in the description page, in the description of this video, you will be able to find links to the Facebook page that we have, as well as some other helpful links like the Get Jobber link app that I discussed.